All right, so we're going to do a quick video lesson for 7.04. You're doing this as a Friday lesson. So this is on the Enlightenment and Age of Reason. Let's go over a couple quick reminders before we actually start. So this is our syllabus. You did do 7.03 earlier this week, and then today you have 7.04. You're going to go ahead and make sure you have your reading pages read, which you may have already done yesterday or last night. And then you also need to watch the flip video lesson, which goes along with pages 204 to 207 in your student guide. And then just a quick reminder, next week we were originally scheduled to have conferences on Monday and Tuesday, but we will not be having conferences. As you know, we've had some, oops, I didn't mean to do that. We've had some email issues, and due to the lack of email and communication, we're going to go ahead and postpone the conferences until probably right before Christmas break. So we do have next week, Monday and Tuesday of class, and then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we have off for Thanksgiving break. So that will be nice. All right, I am not going to go over the student objectives right now because we are going to do that in the flip video lesson. So hang tight here, and we will go right to the flip video lesson, and then we'll come back to our regular class lesson. All right, so we are on 7.04, the Enlightenment in Age of Reason. This goes along with your student guide, pages 204 to 207, and your Human Odyssey, pages 332 to 337. As always, please make sure that you are doing your Human Odyssey reading pages. We just can't cover enough of what's needed for this lesson in this flip video or in class, okay? All right, so let's move on here and get started. So for our introduction, the Enlightenment and Age of Reason. The great minds of the scientific revolution have discovered the rational, orderly laws of the physical world. Might natural law exist in other realms as well? Some thinkers said it did. They gathered to discuss how human reason could be used to improve the world and the people who lived in it. The era in which these great thinkers emerged became known as the Age of Reason or Enlightenment. They asked difficult questions about the nature of human beings and wrote about the nature and role of governments. Their lively discussions and enthusiasm led to changes that still affect us today. So that's just the introduction part. Nothing to fill in on your student guide yet. Define philosophe and deist and describe their beliefs. Explain the ideas of the scientific revolution that were applied to the social world. Identify Benjamin Franklin, John Locke, Louis XIV. Identify the major events and people of the Glorious Revolution and describe the consequences of the revolution. And identify Voltaire, Montesquieu, Diderot, and Condorcet. And so you'll see there's a lot of important people that we will be covering during this lesson. So this is on pages 320, this is on page 204. Use pages 327 and 328 in your Human Odyssey book to help you. So once you read that page 327 and 328, you need to answer these questions. The statement that best describes what John Locke is explaining in the first two paragraphs, that would be that all men are naturally free to do as they wish as long as they do not harm anyone else. And then in the fourth and fifth paragraphs, John Locke argues that men who enter into civil society must follow the rules and decisions of the majority and give up their freedom under natural law, but in exchange, the men will receive protection. And so that is true. That's what he argues, which is interesting because that kind of goes along with what we're kind of going through in today's day and age as well. And then the statements that describe John Locke's comments regarding legislative power. One of the first actions of the society is to establish the legislative power. The legislative power is the supreme power in government, and the only reason to create laws should be for the good of the people. And then according to the last paragraph cited, what should the people do if the civil society ceases to function for the good of the people? And that would be to dissolve the government by exercising their natural rights and create a new civil society that works to their best interest. Not quite sure why that was there. There we go. Okay. So again, that goes along with pages 327 and 328 in your Human Odyssey book. All right, next page here. The social world. So this would be number 1 on your student guide. So Galileo and Newton had focused on investigating the physical world. Other thinkers began to suggest that there also may be laws or principles that apply to the social world. What did they mean by social world? The social world referred to the world of human activity and government. And you can think about that as being social. We're moving around, we're social, we're active with other people. So the social world involves human activity and government. And then we've got human reason, the age of reason. According to John Locke and other thinkers, laws or principles of the social world could be understood by applying the power of human reason. The period from the 1600s to the late 1700s became known as the Age of Reason. It has also been called the Enlightenment because so many thinkers believed that reason could illuminate the truth, meaning, you use reason and you'll figure out or find the truth. John Locke's early life. John Locke was born in England during the reign of King Charles I, who insisted on exercising the divine right of kings. When he was 10, his father fought in the Civil War as a Roundhead, which we learned about Roundheads in our last lesson. He was attending a school in London when the king was executed. He studied medicine in Oxford and became a physician. He was invited to become a member of the Royal Society, which was a scientific organization. Locke flees from England. John Locke fled England and went to the Netherlands. He did not feel safe because his writings showed that he did not approve of the way King Charles ruled. John Locke believed there are moral laws at work in the universe. He called this moral order natural law. Give one example that Locke used to explain how reason can be used to discover these moral laws. So in Locke's view, reason tells us that murder is naturally wrong, and so is stealing. So again, that kind of goes back towards that moral compass, your conscience kind of telling you right from wrong, not just written law telling you right from wrong. Natural rights. According to Locke, natural rights are the rights of life, liberty, and the ownership of property. The job of governments, according to Locke, was to respect natural law and protect natural rights. Protestant leaders do not want King James II to rule England. So why did Protestant leaders oppose King James II as ruler of England? King James II appointed Catholics to high positions in the army, in the government, and in universities. When his subjects protested, he simply ignored them. The people wanted the throne to go to James's daughter Mary, and her Dutch husband William of Orange. The English people called the overthrow of King James the Glorious Revolution. And remember, an overthrow is basically when they come in and kind of, take over the government. Almost in a sense of anarchy, but there is ruling after that. Bill of Rights. As King and Queen of England, William and Mary had to accept a Bill of Rights, which restricted the powers of the king and formally increased the powers of Parliament. A summary of the Bill of Rights. It said that a king needed Parliament's permission to set aside laws, maintain an army in peacetime, or tax people. It said the government had to be based on law, not on a king's desires. It banned Roman Catholics from England's throne. So you can see there, it was the start of, not allowing one person to have absolute power. Okay, so this is the two treaties of government. This is that page that we went over at the very start of this flip video lesson. It's the same information, just in a different format. So feel free to use this if you'd like. It is page, I believe that was 204 in your student guide. Let me check really quickly here. Yeah, 204. This was the document analysis in your student guide, okay, for the treaties of government. All right, moving on. King Louis XIV. King Louis XIV of France called himself the Sun King because he considered himself as important as the sun. The reign of King Louis XIV. King Louis XIV believed in the divine right of kings. He believed he had received his authority from God and did not have to share power with anyone else. And we learned about that divine right of kings again in our last lesson. He and his courtiers lived lives of splendor and excess. He did not involve himself with the struggles of working people, the sufferings of the poor, or the trials of those being persecuted for their religious beliefs. So he would be a good example of that hierarchy that we always talk about, the triangle. He's kind of way up here at the top, and he really doesn't bother himself with the people at the bottom. Philosophers. Philosophers are political thinkers in 18th century France who believed that reason and knowledge could bring justice, equality, and freedom. Deism. Deism is a system of thought that holds that God is the creator of the universe and its natural laws. but that God does not interfere with the laws of the universe or its people's affairs. And you can see that relates to the word deity. Deity has anything to do with God. Deism is this system of thought that holds God as the creator of the universe, but not interfering. All right, Voltaire. Voltaire was a French philosopher and writer. His writings questioned the teachings of the church, and his poems made fun of the French government. He believed people should be free to use reason and make up their own minds about religion, politics, and philosophy. He also believed that enlightened advisors should guide the king in his policies and his laws. So he didn't believe that, the Sun King should have all of the reign or all of the rule, that he should have advisors to help him. Okay, Montesquieu. He was a French philosopher who had lived in England. In his work called The Spirit of Laws, Montesquieu wrote that there were three kinds of government: monarchies, republics, and despotic governments. According to Montesquieu, in a monarchy, a king or queen holds limited powers. He said a republic could either be an aristocracy, in which just a few people hold power, or a democracy in which all the people hold power. He described a despotic government as one controlled by a tyrant, a ruler who holds all the power. Montesquieu opposed despotic governments. He thought either monarchies or republics could be good forms of government. He also believed that the best way to protect liberty was to divide a government's powers among three branches: a legislative branch, which was the lawmaking branch, an executive branch, which was the law enforcing branch, and a judicial branch, which existed, which had the courts in it. And you can see that's very similar to our democracy form of government today. Diderot. Diderot was a French philosopher who published an organized collection of knowledge called the Encyclopédie. His Encyclopédie included a diverse range of articles on subjects such as philosophy, politics, swordsmanship, farming, and calligraphy. French religious and political leaders condemned his work because some of his articles reflected his atheist beliefs. Condorcet. His major work was his sketch for a historical picture of the progress of the human mind. In that book, he argued that men and women could achieve perfection if only they could free themselves of unreasonable rules created by monarchs and religious leaders. He believed that with the right laws and government based on reason, people could eliminate evil from the world. And then we come to Benjamin Franklin. Many European enlightened thinkers admired Benjamin Franklin's confidence in the human ability to understand the physical and social world. Here we need to list a few examples from the reading that show that Franklin used reason to understand the physical and social world. So the invention of the Franklin stove, his experiments with lightning and electricity, his documentation of experiments, his writings on political philosophy, and his role as a diplomat and a statesman. So all of those show where he was using, the understanding of his physical and social world, using what he had around him to make things better and to improve. So there we come to the end. By failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail. I like that quote and saying. So thank you for joining me today, and we'll continue on with the lesson in class. All right, so hopefully you have gotten some of your student guide completed by watching that flip video lesson. Also, just a reminder to make sure, if you have not done so already, to make sure you have pages 322 to 337 read. They are in your book, they are on the Padlet, and they are in the OMS. OMS, remember, stands for your online middle school. So let's keep moving on here to the next page, maybe. There we go. All right, so this was the same introduction that was on your flip video. So we're going to go ahead and skip through that. And we're going to start with the age of reason, the Enlightenment. So it was not the first time in history that people placed confidence in the power of reason. Ancient Greek philosophers and Renaissance humanists had looked to reason as their guide. But on the heels of the scientific revolution, many thinkers felt a new optimism. Scholars began to examine all aspects of human life, from the power of kings to the role of religion. They were sure that through reason, people could examine their world and improve it. Some boldly predicted that they could even perfect human nature itself. The period from the 1600s to the late 1700s became known as the Age of Reason. It's also been called the Enlightenment because so many thinkers believed that reason could illuminate the truth, meaning through reason they could find a true meaning, they could find the truth of things. All right, what rights? What rights do American citizens have, and where do these ideas about our rights come? We're not going to answer this question right now, but I would like you to think about these questions as we're moving through this lesson. Also, perfect questions for this time period that we're in, this time in history. What rights do Americans have? What do we have with things going on around us, in current day history? And then where do these rights come from? So, are the ideas just springing from new things? Did the ideas spring from things of the past? Did these ideas spring from things of the past? So just some things to think about as we're moving through this lesson. So thinking about an age of reason. Age of reason, a period running from the late 1600s, move this down here, there we go, from the late 1600s through the early 1800s, in which European politics, philosophy, science, and communications were radically reoriented. This period was characterized by the prevailing belief in the use of reason and focused on the three themes of reason, individualism, and skepticism. Philosophers were political thinkers of the 18th century who believed that wisdom, reason, and knowledge could bring justice, equality, and freedom. And a lot of that is a refresher rerun from what you just went over in the flip video lesson. Move my little picture over here. There we go. All right, Galileo Galilei. In Italy, and Sir Isaac Newton in England helped launch the movement known as the Scientific Revolution. By observing, experimenting, and calculating, they made important new discoveries about the natural world and how it works. To them, nature seemed to operate in a rational, orderly way that could be explained by mathematical principles, such as the law of motion that Newton formulated. Galileo and Newton had focused on investigating the physical world, meaning the concrete world around them. Now other thinkers began to ask, if there are laws that govern the physical world, might there also be laws or principles that apply to the social world, the world of human activity and government? If reason structured the physical world, then might reason also be found in the social world? So, the physical world are the physical things around us, everything that's there. The social world is the human interaction with those physical things that are around us. So natural laws, natural rights. Age of reason. Philosophers believe that if laws of nature govern the universe, then moral laws govern the universe too. The moral order was called natural law, and it's also known as natural rights. This is the belief that all people have certain rights. John Locke specified that these rights are life, liberty, and property. He believed that no one ought to be able to harm anyone's life, health, liberty, or possessions. And then Locke claimed that the job of government was to respect natural law and to protect the natural rights. Okay, so again, that's a little bit of an echo of what you just saw on the flip video lesson. The rights of a king. The Glorious Revolution begins. 1689, the Glorious Revolution. In 1685, about a year and a half after John Locke fled to the Netherlands, King Charles II died. His brother James became king. The fears of many Protestants were soon realized. King James II began to appoint Catholics to high positions in the army, government, and universities, and then when his subjects protested, he simply ignored them. Like Charles, he relied on royal power and ruled without parliament. So English Protestant leaders then decided that James, he had to go. And so they wanted the throne to go to James's daughter Mary, who was a Protestant, and to her Dutch husband, William of Orange, who ruled the Netherlands. So they asked William of Orange to come to England with his army. And then we get to this divine right of kings, which again, we talked about that during the flip video lesson. The belief that a king derives their power directly from God and not from their subjects. Kings under the divine right are answerable to God alone. Rebelling against the king and questioning the decisions of the king is therefore questioning the decisions of God and is not allowed and is considered a sin. So remember, that divine right of kings is when the leader, the king, believed that he had all power, kind of like the Sun King. So the Glorious Revolution. In November 1688, William set sail from the Netherlands. With him traveled a Protestant army of Dutch, English, Scottish, and French troops. When he arrived in Devon, in the south of England, William confidently ordered his transport ships back home. He was certain the English people would welcome him, and that James's soldiers would refuse to fight. The Dutchman was right. Soon after William's army began to march on London, King James fled the capital for France. Perhaps he recalled what had happened to his grandfather, Charles I, less than a decade before. With almost no bloodshed, the will of Parliament prevailed, and England rid itself of a troublesome monarch. The English people would overthrow the king of gave the overthrow of King James a splendid name, the Glorious Revolution. So when this group of people came in and overthrew King James, they gave it this name of the Glorious Revolution. Which, remember, a revolution is a revolt. It's when people kind of move away from the norm or a government that's in place. So beginning with the Glorious Revolution, Parliament claimed the right to have the final say about who could become King of England. So then we come to, again, the Glorious Revolution, this English Bill of Rights. So just to kind of recap, so the late in the 1688s, King James II, he fled to France. The king had appointed the Catholics to high positions in the army, the government, and the leading universities. So all of these high-ranking positions, they were appointed, and he tried to enforce the king's divine right and to rule without the English Parliament. So the Parliament decided that the king had to go. He again encouraged William of Orange from the Netherlands to come to England with his army to remove the king. Knowing what happened to his grandfather, again, kind of a recap there, he fled, and with almost no bloodshed, the Parliament had vacated the throne. So meaning no bloodshed, there was no war, there were no, big battles. So this gave the Parliament the legal precedent to have the final say about who would become the King of England. And so then eventually Parliament asked William and Mary to come to England to take over the throne. So then we've got this English Bill of Rights in January of 1689. The English Parliament declared that the English throne vacant because King James II had, broken the original contract between the king and the people. So they decided that any new king or queen, in that matter, would have to accept the Parliament and a Bill of Rights. So this, thing saying, okay, these are the laws, this is what has to be. So this document formally restricts the power of the king and increased the power of Parliament. So it took some of that power away from the one king and then increased some of the power to those advisors, that governing body. So it required the Parliament's permission to set aside laws, maintain an army in peacetime, or to tax citizens. It requires that the government be based on laws and not on a king's decree. It also banned any further Roman Catholics from England's throne. So, moving from an absolute monarchy that, where the king or the queen has all power and all say to, moving maybe a little bit towards a constitutional monarchy. So what were the major outcomes of the Glorious Revolution? So if we want to recap those, forced King James II out of England and removed him from the throne. It installed William and Mary, both Protestants, as the new king and queen of England. Increased the power of Parliament, allowed them to have a say over any new king or queen that comes to the English throne, and then it forced the English monarchs to accept an English Bill of Rights. So again, kind of took some of that main power away from the king or queen and put it out into Parliament. So key personalities: Thomas Hobbes. He was an English philosopher, considered a founder of modern political philosophy. Contributed to history, geometry, physics of gases, theology, and ethics. Theology is the study of religion. He's best known for his 1651 book, Leviathan, which was written due to the political crisis of the English Civil War. And he created this idea of a social contract in which people would give up some of their rights to establish laws that limit complete freedom for the sake of protection. So again, some of this stuff that we're talking about today really does apply to what's going on in our world around us today as well. And so there's this social contract, which is an agreement between the people of a country right here and its ruler or government. The people agree to give up some of their freedom in exchange for protection by their government. Theories of the social contract became popular starting in the 1500s and were discussed by theorists such as Hobbes, Locke, and Rousseau. So again, kind of relate that to what's going on today. John Locke was an Englishman born in 1632. He lived through the period of the English Civil War, and his father fought the Roundheads in the English Civil War. He attended Oxford University during the time of Oliver Cromwell's rule, studied medicine, became a physician, turned from science to politics. He began to write about the laws of nature and this idea of, natural rights. He wrote about the things in his book, Two Treaties of Government, and that is in your student guide. Remember, what was that, page 204? Yes, 204 in your student guide. Make sure that you look through that in your book as well. From his experiences with the English Civil War, he felt that if the king failed to honor his obligation to natural law, then it was lawful to go against the king. So, in other words, the king didn't have absolute say or absolute power. So what is John Locke known for? He wrote about the social contract between the people and their government. He believed that the purpose of government should be to protect our rights. He defined those natural rights as life, liberty, and property. And he believed that if a government failed to protect those rights, people had the right to remove it and create new government. So, kind of a revolution, a revolt. All right, so Montesquieu, he was a Frenchman known as Baron de Montesquieu. He had lived in England and praised English liberties and mocked the French court and Parisian social life. In his work called The Spirit of Laws, Montesquieu describes three kinds of government: monarchies, republics, and despotic governments. He also wrote in his book that governmental power should be divided among three branches: legislative, executive, and judicial. And then his ideas were used to help create several constitutions. All right, Voltaire was an 18th century French philosophe. The philosophe comes from the Greek word, or the Greek language, for friends of wisdom. His real name was Francois-Marie Arouet, but was better known by his pen name Voltaire. And a pen name is just something a lot of times writers would use as a kind of pseudonym. He often criticized French institutions. This often got him into trouble with the law. He criticized the French government, and that caused him to be put in jail for a short time. He also chose to live in exile, meaning kind of far off away, in places such as London, Geneva, Strasbourg, and Berlin. He wrote against injustices and often supported ideas such as freedom of speech and freedom of religion, which, we see now freedom of speech and freedom of religion is, everybody has it. But that definitely was not the case back then. And he believed that people should be able to use their reason and make up their own minds about religion, philosophy, and politics. All right. Then we come to Marquis de Condorcet. He was a Frenchman. He was the son of a cavalry officer, father, and a deeply religious mother. He was an outstanding mathematician. He published his major work, Sketch for a Historical Picture of the Progress of the Human Mind, in 1795. He argued that men and women could achieve perfection if only they could free themselves of unreasonable rules created by monarchs and religious leaders, meaning people shouldn't be held to rules that maybe were unreasonable, that were unattainable. He believed that with right laws and with forms of government based on reason, people could eliminate evil from the world. And then he had faith in mankind's progress and displayed a high point of Enlightenment optimism. Optimism is where you believe the best, where he believed that through the power of reason, humans could improve their world. And then Benjamin Franklin. We all know Benjamin Franklin, right? You can tell it's the evening time. My words are getting tied. He was an English colonist and an early Enlightenment thinker. He studied science, philosophy, history, and mathematics. He was famous for his print shop and for his publication, the Pennsylvania Gazette, and of Poor Richard's Almanac. He was always inventing things. We've heard of like his zillion inventions, right? He created bifocal glasses and the Pennsylvania fireplace, an iron fireplace insert. It was better known as Franklin's stove. It used less wood and produced more heat. He worked to unlock the mysteries of electricity and investigated the nature of lighting. He believed that nature of lightning. He believed that lightning was electricity and worked to prove this through experiments, which now know, that is the truth. He served as a founder and ambassador for the American colonies and the new American government. So he was a pretty important guy, pretty smart guy. So what role did the philosophers play during the Age of Reason and the Enlightenment? So they questioned the role of the king and the government. They questioned what rights people had or should have. They wrote and shared their ideas. The printing press allowed these ideas to travel. So remember, the printing press, Johannes Gutenberg way back, the 1400s, I think. And he helped to lay the groundwork for change. So, or they helped, I shouldn't say all the philosophers helped to lay this groundwork for change. So again, think about that. What we talked about at the beginning of class, that idea of questioning ideas, questioning thoughts. Let's see, Denis Diderot. So he was a French writer. He decided to create a massive collection that would organize all knowledge, written by Diderot, in which the first volume was published in 1751, was an encyclopedia, basically encyclopedia. 27 more volumes were published over the next 20 years. And then he called the work the encyclopedia, which comes from the Greek words meaning enkyklaios, paideia, meaning general education. So Diderot's encyclopedia, or PDA, was a massive collection of organized knowledge that was collected and written by him, in which the first volume was published in 1751. 27 more volumes were published over the next 20 years. He called this work the encyclopedia, which comes from the Greek word enkyklaios, paideia, meaning general education. Obviously, I do not speak Greek. All right, we come to Louis XIV. Louis XIV was a French king that believed in the divine right of kings. He had very few limits on his royal power. He lived in splendor and excess. His palace took 36,000 workers, 5 decades to finish, 50 years. He really did not understand the struggles of everyday working people or the poor. So he, that, like I said in the flip video lesson, there's that hierarchy. He was up here, and he really didn't understand anyone or anything that was below him. All right, 2 more definitions. I promise we're getting close. I know this is a really long recording. Deism, we talked about that in the flip video. It's this system where, there's a thought that God created the universe and its laws, but God doesn't interfere with those laws. And then a deist, Enlightenment thinkers that were believers in natural religion. These thinkers put forth a system of thought called deism. They believed that reason proved there was a God and that God was the creator of an ordered universe. The deists believe that God does not actively take part in the workings of the world or in people's affairs. Okay, so those are 2 little keywords there. All right, please make sure that you do have your reading pages 322 to 327 complete before you take your assessment. You will have time, not to rewind through the slides during this lesson, but they are posted in your class on the Padlet, and then they are posted obviously on this video. So if you need to stop and rewind, you can go back. Okay. When you are finished with pages 322 to 337 reading, your student guide pages 204 to 207. When you're done with all of that, you can go ahead and take your quiz. There's no password on the quiz today, so please feel free to take it as soon as you feel prepared and ready. Okay. And just kind of a fun little video here. Thank you for joining me. Have a great, I guess it would probably be morning or afternoon while you're reading this, I would assume, or watching this. So have a great day. Thanks so much. And I will see you next week. Bye, everyone.